Hey everyone, welcome to the first workshop of this year's Oxford Schools 2023 Debate Workshop Series. I'm Dhruv. I'll be one of the chief adjudicators for this year's edition of the Schools Championships. And so quick overview of what we will be doing in this workshop series, and then what I'll be specifically going through today. So this workshop series is essentially targeted more towards sort of newer debaters. Maybe even if you've had no debate experience, this should be a perfectly great introduction to debate for you. So we'll be going through what debate is, why you should debate, and then how to really get better at debate. That's what our future workshop series courses will be targeted at. So we'll go through specific courses on, for example, argumentation, rebuttal, strategy, the different houses, the different speaker roles, and debates. But you don't have to worry about all of that right now, because today's workshop is a lot more simple. We're exclusively focused on debate, what it is, and why you ought to do it. So with no further ado, let's get into it. Like any good debate speech, I'll provide you with a roadmap of what I'll be doing, essentially a table of contents. So there will be two questions in this presentation. Firstly, what debate is, within which I'll talk about what competitive debating looks like and what we actually debate about. Second question will be why you should do debate. So I'm going to go through four reasons there. Firstly, on critical thinking. Secondly, on communication. Thirdly, on community. And fourthly, on accomplishments. I was trying to go for 4 C's, but unfortunately, I could not get them. Okay, so moving on. First question, what does competitive debate look like? So quick context, though there are many different forms of competitive debating, the sort of format or version that we'll be using in Oxford Schools, and we always do, is British Parliamentary. So the first thing I want to tell you about British Parliamentary debate is that you are debating with a partner. You are not in this alone. You are hopefully not going to entirely screw up by yourself. You have someone there who's supporting you, who's there with you, who's going to be your teammate and partner throughout the tournament and throughout the process. So you are not in this alone. Moving on from that, though, debate is really centered about a motion. And a motion is nothing more than a subject or a topic that you'll be discussing. It tends to be a specific proposal or a specific idea that we're trying to figure out whether we should be supporting or whether we should be opposing. So once you receive the motion, and I'll give some examples of motions later on, you will have 15 minutes to prepare. This may sound like a short period, and I won't lie to you, it kind of is. But I think there are many benefits that this 15-minute period provides you with, and it also ensures that debating isn't purely about like who can spend the most time researching beforehand. I think it tests your thinking skills and your communication skills in a way that is, I think it's very beneficial, and I think it tends to be a great learning opportunity for a lot of speakers as well. So yeah, in those 15 minutes, nobody is going to be really speaking or debating, at least in a formal way. Rather, you and your teammate are just going to be by yourselves discussing what you think your argument should be, what do you think the debate is going to look like, what different people are going to talk about, all of that sort of stuff. Okay, so after these 15 minutes, what actually happens within the debate? So though we very simply understand debate to be sort of about like a proposition and an opposition team, aka those who support the motion and those who oppose the motion, British Parliamentary complicates this a bit, as tends to be the case very often in debate. So there is the proposition is who we call the government, and the opposition is simply called opposition. However, there aren't just one team on each side. Rather, there are two government teams, the opening government and the closing government, and there are two opposition teams, the opening opposition and the closing opposition. If this sounds complicated at all, I assure you it really isn't nearly as hard as it sounds, and we will have a separate workshop entirely on how these teams work and what you will do as, as each speaker on each team. Okay, so at the end of the debate, essentially when everyone has given their speech, you will then, well, you're being judged by a judge who will then rank you from first to fourth. So you are being ranked as a team, not necessarily as an individual. That's a separate issue. But the crux of debate is ranking you as a team. So you really are working with your partner. Again, this is a competitive sort of activity. a sport, if you want to call it that. So what that means is there are rankings and there are sort of points to be gained from getting higher rankings. Cool. So now that you hopefully understand what British parliamentary debating and school level debating really looks like, let's go through the very simple fundamentals of debate. And I think there are really just two things to understand at this level. Firstly, arguments, and secondly, rebuttal. Because very simply, I think this translates to proving in arguments why you're correct, and in rebuttal, why the other side is wrong. Your arguments are meant to be sort of discrete claims about why the motion is either correct or incorrect. So, for example, if you have, let's say the motion is about the idea that maybe countries in the developing world shouldn't be hosting Olympics or major sporting events, right? If you are on proposition or like the opening government team, you may choose to make an argument about how holding major sporting events tends to be a financial burden on these countries, how it's too expensive, and they often can't afford to hold these sort of events. Again, this is just an example of what a debate might look like. These arguments, you don't have to have a ton of them. Most teams will have about 2 or 3. But these are basically the way to show that you are correct in the debate and why the judge should believe your side of the motion, why they should side with the government rather than the opposition, or the opposition rather than the government. The rebuttal then is how you deal with the other side's arguments. Because yes, it's great if you prove that there's a lot of benefits to your side, right? However, the other team, the other side, is going to be doing the exact same thing. They're also going to be providing arguments as to why they're correct. So your other job as a team is to prove not only why you are right, but the other side is wrong. This is where rebuttal comes in. Rebuttal specifically proves why the arguments they made are either flawed or inaccurate, or they're unimportant, or maybe they're actually just arguing for like the wrong side occasionally, right? It does happen. So there are a variety of ways to do rebuttal. And again, do not worry at all. We will have a separate workshop on argumentation and a separate workshop on rebuttal. But what I want you to understand is that this is really just the crux of debating. It's really not that complicated. It's proving why you're right and why the others are wrong. Cool. So then moving on, what do we actually debate about? Essentially, what do the motions tend to be subject based on? And you may have certain preconceptions of what debating tends to be about, but I'd say any preconception tends to be quite inaccurate, just because debating is a very varied activity. So just looking at some of the subjects that I've listed here, you could debate one round about history. You could debate the next round about education policy, the next round about ethics and philosophy, and maybe the final round about pop culture and certain tropes in movies or books. Now, that is not to say that like maybe you've heard that debating tends to very often be about politics and economics. Sometimes this is true, and I think people who are interested in politics and economics tend to be quite interested in debate as well. But just because you aren't interested in those, or maybe that's not your main focus, doesn't mean that debate isn't for you. Because there's such a variety of different things that we cover in debate that not only do I think there will be something for you that'll capture your interest, I think that having a different interest to some other debaters is often a unique advantage, right? So if you go into like a pop culture debate, knowing a ton of movies and TV series and books that like other people haven't watched or read, then you are going to go in with an advantage. And to some degree, you have a better chance of winning that debate. So like hopefully something on this list interests you. But what I'm really just trying to show you is that debating has so much variety that there's almost guaranteed to be something at some point that is really interesting to you. Hopefully many things that are of interest to you. But yeah, we debate about political system. So like what method of voting, or even is democracy fundamentally a good thing, right? Criminal justice, like should we be imprisoning people for long amounts of time? That sort of thing. Culture and narrative, so tropes in the media. Should we support like the idea of like bad boys in movies or TV shows, right? Economics, do we support using certain levels of like, do we support increasing taxes or increasing spending to help fight a recession? International relations, do we want to place further sanctions on Russia for their actions in Ukraine? Okay, I'm not going to go through this entire list because this is longer than I realized, but you get the idea. There's not only a variety of different subjects, but there's a variety of sort of subtopics within each one, covering different parts of the world, different parts of the media, all of that sort of stuff. Cool. So now that I've talked to you about what debating is and what it looks like, I'll now try to prove to you that you should debate. So as a debater, I'll be doing this in sort of structured argument reasons. So first reason is that debate changes how you think. And I think this is in a very positive way. First point here is that it makes your mind very analytical. What do I mean by this? Debate is about analyzing emotion, right? You have to look at an idea or a proposal and sort of be able to evaluate what is good about this, what is bad about this, who all is it affecting, on what scale is it affecting them, how will it change the future, how will it change people's ideas about the past. All of these sort of things are all coming about in a debate. And like, again, don't worry, not all of it has to come out in debate. Indeed, it would be a pretty high level debate if it did. But these are all things that can come out in debate. And as you sort of continue analyzing motions, you're going to learn more and more how to do that, how to do that effectively. This is a skill that is transferable across many different sectors of your life, whether it be in school, if you're writing an argumentative essay, in an interview, if you need to evaluate a policy or just speak in an eloquent way to another individual, or even when you're having a political discussion with your friends, right? If you happen to be that sort of crowd. I think having an analytical mind is massively helpful in all these sort of situations. Further, you can think of both sides of an issue. Because in a debate, you aren't necessarily always going to be assigned the side that you like. It's a random process. Maybe on the motion I mentioned before, on this house would stop developing countries from hosting major sporting events, you happen to really like major sporting events being held in developing countries like Brazil, etc. Unfortunately, you might not always get assigned that side. This may sound bad, but I think it's a really good thing to be able to broaden your horizons, make you sort of less closed-minded, and be able to think about how others feel about issues. It makes you almost a more empathetic person intellectually in that way. Thirdly, debate makes you very quick thinking. And this is just sort of obvious because if you have 15 minutes to prepare a motion, obviously you need to be thinking very quickly about this. Furthermore, within a speech, if you've just heard someone else say an argument that you now have to rebut, right? You don't have a great deal of time to do it. This is hard, but it's a skill that 100% gets better over time. Like I personally struggled with it a ton when I started out debating, but you can get much better over time. And eventually that quick thinking nature helps you in all regards of your life. I think it's pretty intuitive how. And finally, it just builds your knowledge of the world, right? Especially if you're talking about things like international relations or politics or economics, things that are based on the real world. You are going to learn an awful lot being in debate, both because you're going to want to like research and build your own knowledge, and also because you're going to listen to other like very smart people, people you may have never met before from different schools who have different levels of knowledge and different sectors of knowledge about the world, and you're just going to learn an awful lot, and that's a really fun thing to do, and it's a really beneficial thing to do as well. All right. Secondly, debate also changes how you communicate. So again, sort of relating to the sort of quick thinking idea, debate teaches you fundamentally how to sound eloquent on an extemporaneous level. Extemporaneous just meaning you don't have a ton of time to prepare. So if you realize that you forgot to prepare a speech for your class, or you're going into an interview and you receive a question that you haven't prepared for, and you have to come up with a response on the fly, debate will definitely teach you how to do that, both because it teaches you how to generate ideas quickly and how to express them in a manner that sounds intelligent and in a way that avoids you using a bunch of filler words like or I've probably used those a couple of times while speaking today, but it's not the norm. It does teach you how to speak much better. Furthermore, teaches you how to cater your message to different audiences, right? Even though you're just addressing a judge, you may, realize that the judge may have a certain way of looking at a debate, and based on that, you want to cater your arguments in a certain way. Obviously, just because you have a different person judging you doesn't mean you should have a different set of arguments to fit like their preconceptions about the world, because judges are completely meant to be neutral. But I just think debating, especially when you hear other people's arguments and how other people are debating, it teaches you how to cater your messages to different audiences. Okay. Furthermore, it helps you articulate your thought process. I'm writing this specifically because I think there are a lot of people who sort of associate this phrase with university interviews, and it's sort of true. If you can explain how your mind functions and how you're thinking of an idea, that's a really helpful thing to do in an interview, and debate is very helpful in that regard. I mean, to a large extent, it's what we do in debate, articulating how we think and why we think it. And finally, maximizing word efficiency, which is a phrase that I've heard and I liked. It basically means that you don't waste words, you don't mince what you're saying, you are efficient, you are concise, succinct, and overall just very clear. I used 4 adjectives to that, so probably not very concise, but you got the idea. All right, second part of the reasons why to debate, starting with the debate community. So, the debate community is very populous, so it's very large. It's very diverse, and we are very nice. The people who do debate tend to be really great people. It's awesome to meet them, especially in a competition like Oxford Schools. You're going to meet people from schools around you you may never have. If you get the opportunity to come to finals day, you're going to meet students internationally from different parts of the UK that you've never been to probably. So it's just a great experience overall, and it helps you build an awesome community. And I can almost guarantee that if you do debate for a certain length of time, you will make a couple new and probably really great friendships. It's a really tight-knit community as well in school and certainly in university. Some of my closest friends have been made through debate. I know countless people who've done the same. It's a really supportive community and just a very close one overall. And finally on that, you just get to meet people like yourself, right? Debaters obviously have very different worldviews, politically, ideologically, economically, all that sort of stuff. But we're all sort of similar in the way that we want to engage in this activity. We enjoy the things that we're debating about. So you get to meet people with similar sort of passions with you. And you can often connect about passions outside of debate. You don't exclusively need to talk about debate with your debate friends. Okay, and finally, on accomplishments or debating glory. I leave this for last because I genuinely do think this is the least important thing. Because there's so many benefits of debate that really aren't contingent on whether you win or lose. Like for the first part of my debating career, I used to lose a lot. And the fact that I continued debating sort of shows you that I probably enjoyed it back then, which is why I continued. But if you happen to be fortunate enough to be at the point in your debating career where you're doing well, obviously it's very nice to win as well. You get to feel a sense of pride. It may look good on applications, university internships, all that sort of stuff. And maybe even some people find it kind of cool that you're debating at like an Oxford debating competition, right? You could tell your parents or your grandparents and they'll sound really cool and they'll be proud of you. Your friends around you might find it cool. Hopefully they find it cool and not super lame, but they might find it cool, which is the upside. So yeah, those are all of the key reasons that I can think of how I can persuade you to do debate. So just in conclusion, I know I've gone over a decent amount, especially when it came to what does debate look like. But I want to remind you that we are coming out with a series of lectures. This isn't the only one. So there are going to be different members of the Chief Adjudication team, all explaining different parts of debate, how to get you familiar and indeed better at them, whether it be about strategy during prep time or about argumentation or about rebuttal. All these sort of things we're going to teach you from the ground up and hopefully make you much better at it if you've ever done it before as well. And then my final thing to say is just that many people, especially at like, oh, this is an Oxford debating competition, right? It must be only for really, really good or really, really experienced debaters. This is absolutely not the case. People, when they start debate, they tend to not be the very best debaters. And this is just sort of innate to any activity, right? Practice makes perfect. But just because you aren't sort of thriving or really doing well at the beginning doesn't mean that there isn't a future in debate for you. The story I personally tell is that when I tried to join a debate team in like my first year of high school, I was unfortunately rejected from it. My school didn't take me for that team. Now I'm here. I've accomplished a lot in debate. I love debate. I do a ton of debate. And I'm chief adjudicating an Oxford Schools competition. So like there is definitely potential for every single individual in debate to improve. So yeah, don't be discouraged if you're not super good already. And please, please definitely don't think that Oxford Schools isn't for you just because you don't have a great deal of debate experience. Because one, not everyone who joins is super experienced, but two, I think Oxford Schools is probably one of the best tournaments to get better at debate, just because there's so much learning. The judges are really great. They're going to give you awesome feedback. And you're going to hear from other debaters who maybe are more experienced. So you'll learn from them as well. So Oxford Schools is not just an opportunity to sort of just to debate and to win, but it's also a learning opportunity. So I definitely think that regardless of your level of debate experience, it can be a really great opportunity for you to either get better, to learn, or even just to start your debating experience. They're all perfectly valid reasons. So yeah, great. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you tune in to our next lecture next week. All right, thanks for joining us, and bye.